Vermont's governor and the mayor of Burlington want Congress to act on gun safety measures. Phil Scott says red flag laws and expanded federal background checks should be looked at. But what about the local level? Well, this week I sat down with Mayor Miro Weinberger. Take a look. Mayor, you signed a letter last week with 213 other members, calling on the Senate to come back to Washington and vote on gun safety bills. We know at this point that that's not going to happen. But you do have the ear of the governor. So he vetoed a couple of months ago a bill on the waiting periods, but signed that historic gun legislation, those two bills, I think, last year.
Yeah.
What would you say to him right now and encourage the governor about the outlook when it comes to the state?
Well, I think you're right that it doesn't appear that Mitch McConnell is calling back the Senate for an immediate vote. I am hopeful still that there is a changing dynamic in Washington around gun violence protections. It does seem that maybe this time is going to be different in terms of the Senate and presidential reaction to this. I don't know how, if you are serving in the federal government in a position of authority after witnessing what happened in that one weekend and what has happened over the last 6 years since Newtown, how you can sleep at night and not do anything in response to these just incredible massacres. It has gotten to the point where I think people, I've had many mothers say to me that is the only thing they care about. They actually have fear sending their children off to school now. That is not the America that we grew up in. This is not an acceptable way for us to continue forward.
I mean, it wasn't a concern 20 years ago for parents.
Not at the level it is now. I mean, we did have shootings back then, of course, but it had the magnitude of them has amplified. I mean, it's stunning to know even that weekend where Dayton and El Paso happened, those were just 2 of 5 mass shootings that took place across the country that weekend. The weekend before, there were 8 mass shootings. There have been 2,100 mass shootings defined as 4 or more people being killed or injured by a shooter since Newtown happened in 2012. So the federal government is going to have to do something. We're not going to get to where we need to be without action at the federal level. And I am hopeful that something could be coming sooner rather than later. These red flag laws, the background checks, I'm hopeful we're going to see some kind of action maybe as soon as this fall from the federal government.
Are you encouraged the governor could make some decisions and look at anything on his desk, as he has said?
Yeah, so is there more the state should do? Absolutely. We have gotten to where we are with tens of thousands of people dying from gun violence deaths every year in this country out of, I think, decades of negligent policies. And even if there is action this fall in D.C., it is not going to address everything that needs to be addressed here. It's not going to make us, get us to, put us on a kind of comparable safety footing as basically every other kind of comparable country in the world has figured out a way to do. So I do think we're going to need to take a public health approach to this for a long time, do what we've done with vehicles or the HIV epidemic, of bringing kind of a public health sustained approach that says how do we take a whole range of actions that makes gun violence deaths far less likely than they are today. And so I think some of that action could take place on the state level. I go back to the stuff that Burlingtonians said should happen years ago. It is still
legislature didn't okay that.
Yeah, it is still legal to have guns in bars in Vermont today. I don't see why we couldn't do what Alaska and Texas and other rural states have done.
Is the time limit up for the legislature to?
No. They can act. They continue to be there, waiting for them to take action if they were to choose to do so. I think this safe storage idea that people have a responsibility to make sure their guns are properly stored is something the voters endorsed years ago. That too, I think, is a common sense action that needs to be considered. I do think there's more beyond that, but let's not take the pressure off the federal government to do. That is where action will have the biggest impact, and I do think there's a chance, a moment for action right now, and I hope your your viewers are thinking about that and weighing in if they care about this issue.
Mayor, thank you. Aides for Majority Leader Mitch McConnell made clear the Kentucky Republican hasn't endorsed any specific background check legislation. The president has continued a series of calls with lawmakers involved in the gun issue, including some staunchly opposed to GOP positions. We'll be right back.